Hello and welcome. In this video, you will learn how to add social login to a Laravel application. Before we get started, let's take a look at what social login is and how the Laravel framework handles social login by default. Social login is a method of adding user authentication to your application such that users can log in using their existing accounts on popular social media sites like Twitter, Facebook, Google, and so on. This feature can increase the number of users that sign up on your site, as it eliminates the need for a user to create and remember a new set of username and password. By default, the Laravel framework uses the Socialite package for implementing social login. Though this package is useful, it has some limitations. For example, it only supports a limited number of social login providers. These providers are the social media sites where the user already has an account. The providers that Socialite supports include Facebook, Twitter, Google, LinkedIn, GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. Because of the above limitation, we will not be using Socialite in this guide. Instead, we will implement a custom solution. Keep watching to learn how to add social login to a Laravel app using any social login provider. Our first step for this guide is to get the OAuth credentials from the social login providers portal. Different providers have their own unique user interface for getting the credentials. We will be using AuthGear as the provider, for example. You might be wondering, what is AuthGear? AuthGear is an authentication as a service solution that offers interesting features like two-factor authentication, biometric login, and an all-in-one-place social login. I will explain all-in-one social login later in this video. To use AuthGear, go to portal.authgear.com on your browser and sign up a free account. Next, log in and create a new project. For this example, I'll be using an existing project. So here's the project. The project page shows various options and features of AuthGear in the side navigation bar. To get the OAuth credentials for your AuthGear project, click Applications from the navigation bar. Then create a new application or select an existing one. For this example, I'll be selecting an existing application. Now, this is the application's configuration page. On this page, you can find the OAuth credentials, that is a client ID and client secret, the application type, the authorized redirect URI, and other configurations. Before we continue, let's take a closer look at what the application type and authorized redirect URI are. AuthGear supports several application types based on the type of client. To keep things simple, we will only be using the OIDC client application type. The value of the authorized redirect URI should be a valid page in your Laravel application. This page will contain the logic for exchanging an authorization code for an access token. Note down the client ID, client secret, authorized direct URI, and endpoints for your AuthGear application. For the next step, you need to create a new Laravel project or use an existing project. All the details you need about setting up a project can be found on the official Laravel documentation page. Now let's start coding. So here we are in a blank new Laravel project. First thing we are going to be doing, we need to install a package. This package is called Laravel Breeze. So Breeze is basically a package that helps to create a template for user login and user sign up to a Laravel application. So to install this package, you are just going to run this command composer require Laravel / breeze. So at this point, we wait for the breeze package to be installed. Now that breeze is successfully installed, we need to enable the breeze package. Enabling the breeze package will be what to set up all the necessary routes and pages for user login and registration. So we can enable breeze by pasting this command and running it. So this is going to bring up a wizard for you to determine how you want to set up breeze. We are going to be going with blade, the first option. So with blade, that means we can write our front end using the same PHP code. The next thing is, do you want dark mode support? Just going to say no. Go with the default and wait for the dependencies to be installed. And with that, breeze has been enabled. We can verify this by going to our controllers. So if you go to app http controllers, you'd see there's a new auth controller folder that contains all the controllers related to authentication. So have confirmed password, email verification, and so on. So with that, we've successfully set up Breeze, and we now have the default user authentication in a Laravel project in this project. Now, let's test our progress so far by running the application in a web browser. To do that, you need to run the php artisan serve command. After running this command, you can see that our server is running on localhost port 8000. This means if we visit this port on a web browser, we should be able to see our application in action. So let's do that. Now here we are back in the browser. So let's open localhost on the port 8000. So this brings up the default Laravel page. But on this page, because we've successfully set up Breeze, we can see the page now includes login and register link. And if you click any of the links, you see there's already a default UI that Breeze has helped us set up. In the next step, we'll start putting the social login feature. We'll have an extra button somewhere that says sign in with AuthGear. Let's go back to VS Code again. We would stop the server and create a new controller. We will call this controller OAuth controller. So you can use this code to create the controller. PHP artisan make controller OAuth controller. So with that, our OAuth controller has been created. If you go to app http controllers, let's close this, you can see the new controller. So we will be adding the code, the logic to this controller, and one of the first logic we'll be adding is the logic for redirecting users to the provider's authorization page. To add the sign in with AuthGear button, navigate to resources, views, auth, and open the login.blade.php file. In that file, look for the login button, which is here. Then add this code just after the div containing the login button. Save your work and you can test on the browser. So here we are on the browser. You can see that we now, after refreshing the page, we now have a login with AuthGear provider. So next we are going to install another package. This package is League OAuth 2 client. So what this package is going to do is help us with configuring the OAuth 2 client in our Laravel application, and it will also help us with making all the requests to the authorization server and OAuth endpoints. So you install the package by pasting this command and hitting enter. So now the package is installed. We can go ahead to use it in our code. So we'll be using this package in this OAuth controller.php file. So first we will import the OAuth 2 client package using this code. Now we'll add a constructor for this OAuth controller class using the following code. So this is basically a constructor that sets up a generic provider. So the generic provider is part of the OAuth 2 client library that we imported. So this constructor basically sets up a generic provider and has the members variable so that we can access it from other methods within the class. Another thing to note is the configuration where you put your client ID and client secret. You need to create these values in the .env file. So .env file is in the root of your Laravel project. So you just need to find somewhere here and add the .env file and then include the values that you get from AuthGear in that file. Here is an example of the .env fields added to the file. You just need to get the values, your project URL, client ID, client secret, and you need to set up a redirect URI. We'll come back to this later in the tutorial, but this is an example of those keys added to the .env file without any values. Now let's add a method to the OAuth controller class. This method is what will be called when the user clicks on the login with AuthGear button we added earlier to login.blade.php. So what this method does basically, it generates the authorization URL by calling the get authorization URL helper methods that is part of the League OAuth 2 client package we added earlier. Then it performs a redirect to that URL. We're going to see this in action when we do a demo. Now, let's create a route that handles requests to the link that the login with AuthGear button points to. So to do that, you open the routes folder, open the web.php routes, and within this list of routes, you can add a new route. So on a new line, we would add the following routes. We need to import this class. To get rid of this error, we need to import the OAuth controller class. To do that, add the following line. And like that, we've imported this. So at this point, we should be able to run our app, click on the login with AuthGear button, and the app should attempt to redirect us to the authorization server for AuthGear. But we first need to add the configurations here. So I am going to add the configuration and test run it before we proceed. One other thing that is worth mentioning is this authorized redirect URI. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, that this is actually a link to a page on your application that does the job of exchanging an authorization code for an access token. So we might as well want to implement that route first before we continue. So let's do that. To implement the route, we go back to the OAuth controller class and add a new function using the following code. So this function is the handle redirect function, and basically what this function does is it checks when the user is redirected back to this page, it checks the URL query parameters for the code parameter. If the code parameter is available, it will call the get access token helper method that is part of the OAuth 2 client, and that method will return response. In case there's an error, it throws an error here, but if there's no error, that method will return an access token. And as part of the normal OAuth flow, you can now use that access token to actually access, just for testing purpose, to access protected resources. So that's what is going on here. To finish setting up the redirect route, let's go back to the web.php route file and add this new route that calls the handle redirect function that we just added. So with all this in place, just like I said earlier, if you add your configuration to the .env file, you should be able to get to the authorization page for the provider, which is AuthGear, and if you log in successfully, you'll be redirected back to exchange the authorization code for an access token. So at this point, let's test our app. Remember to add the necessary configuration to the .env file. So for the redirect URI now, what this means is it's going to be localhost /OAuth/callback. And remember, you need to also add that redirect URI here. So the reason why that redirect URI is localhost port 8000 is because we are testing on localhost. So in case it's on a custom domain that you own, you might want to put a domain name, whatever URL that points to this route that we've just configured that has the logic for exchanging authorization code for access token. So remember to add this here and save. If you run PHP artisan serve again and you go to the web browser and refresh this page, then click on the login with AuthGear button, you will now be redirected to AuthGear's authorization default page. One of the features up there provides it the ability to customize this page or even build your own page from the ground up. And you can come here, select the user's name and password. And if this user exists, I should be able to log in and I'll be redirected back to the redirect URL, which is this. So, and this is the authorization code, and you can see that's actually just displaying the user's email address after calling the helper method that helps you access the user protected resources. So that's what's happening. So what this means is our code works fine. We're done with the part of connecting our Laravel application to the provider AuthGear. Another interesting feature of AuthGear is that once you integrate AuthGear, imagine a scenario where you want to add sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook to your site. Using the example we've done so far, we've added one provider, which is AuthGear. So if you're going to add another provider, you might have to repeat the same steps. Add another button, add a URL and set up the route, everything. You have to repeat all those steps for each provider. But one good thing about AuthGear is that AuthGear provides this feature that can eliminate the need to do all that. You just integrate AuthGear as a provider, then you can configure every other provider within AuthGear. So that feature, you can find it in AuthGear Portal by navigating to authentication and social/enterprise login. So this page shows you the list of several providers that AuthGear currently supports. So let's take, for example, you want to add Google. You just enable Google and you go to Google's OAuth console, the config on Google Cloud or wherever you can get your client ID and client secret from Google, and you put them here. You can also repeat the same process for Facebook and repeat the same process for GitHub. So once you're done adding all the social logins you've enabled here, once you integrate your application to AuthGear, when the user is redirected to the authorization page, those social logins will be shown there as part of the options that they can use to log in addition to entering their password and username. So this is how it works. So let me show you another example. I'll try to configure Google and let's see how it goes. So I've added my Google OAuth credentials, the client ID and client secret in AuthGear Portal. Because I've done that, I can now log in with Google. So clicking on login with AuthGear provider takes me to this page. If I click on the use another account, you can now see there's a sign in with Google. So this is going to use the Google OAuth profile that is connected to my Google Cloud account. So this makes it way easier. To demonstrate the extra simplicity the all-in-one social login integration feature of AuthGear brings to your application, I have added Facebook as a provider through the AuthGear portal. So what that means is if I simply refresh this default login page, just like you have sign in with Google here, the new provider Facebook that I've added would appear. So let's do the refresh. So you can see now we have login with Facebook. So it's as easy as that. Once you connect your application to AuthGear by adding AuthGear to the Laravel application, you can easily add more social login to your application just by going to AuthGear portal and saving the client ID and client secret. It's that simple. So that's one of the simplicity AuthGear adds I mentioned earlier in this video. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. If you wish to learn more about AuthGear, I have links to the official documentation site where you can find examples and different use cases. Thank you for watching.